Have you ever wondered why some gardens feel extraordinary while others don't, even though they look great on paper? This is a question I've thought about a lot. And in today's video, I'm going to talk about how we can start thinking like garden designers without actually being one. And it all starts with a story. The story starts with a garden center visit back in Detroit, Michigan on a cold winter afternoon. It was the kind of Detroit cold that makes you walk fast and keep your head down. I was definitely suffering from spring fever, so I decided what I needed was a trip to a garden center. And the garden center I visited is called Fleur Detroit. The garden center is made up of two main buildings connected by a courtyard. And since it was winter, I wasn't planning on spending time in the courtyard. But as I walked through that entrance, I was stopped in my tracks. This courtyard, which you wouldn't expect to be beautiful since it was the middle of the winter, was absolutely gorgeous. I couldn't tell you exactly why at the time. It was winter, there weren't any flowers, and the space was being used to display products for sale. Terracotta pots and weathered garden objects, things stacked in a range, neatly and artistically. By any conventional measure, this area really didn't have the right to be beautiful. But it was. It was completely, inexplicably beautiful. And more than beautiful, it was moving. I felt something in that courtyard that I only usually feel in extraordinary spaces. A kind of stillness, a sense of having arrived into another world. And even though it was a cold winter day in Detroit, I walked all over that courtyard and enjoyed every moment of it. And I kept asking myself, why? Why does this feel this way? What is it about this space that makes it so extraordinary? I get exactly the same feeling when I visit another Detroit garden center called the Detroit Garden Works. Again, another courtyard, another arrangement of garden objects and plants displayed for sale. And again, that quality, that feeling of a space that's been composed, not just filled with products, where every object seems to know its place, where the light falls just the right way, and everything feels so intentional. I've been visiting spaces like these for years. I've always known that I've loved these spaces, but I've never quite been able to articulate why, until now. I think most of us who love beautiful spaces have had this experience. You walk into some place, a shop, a garden, a room, and something happens to you. Your pace changes. You feel almost physically a shift, and you want to stay and linger in this place. And we've all experienced the opposite effect, where you walk into a space that on paper is equally well designed. It's got good bones, it has nice objects, expensive materials, but there's something that's missing. You look around, you appreciate it, and you move on. You don't want to linger. The difference between those two experiences is real, and it's consistent, and it's not random. The spaces I keep returning to, Fleur Detroit, Detroit Garden Works, Terrain, were doing something deliberate, something designed. And I became almost obsessed with understanding what that something was. What I discovered is that the design principles behind these spaces don't come from retail design at all. They come from somewhere much older. And understanding where they come from changes the way you see everything. Here's what I think is happening in those spaces. The retailers I love, Terrain, Fleur Detroit, Detroit Garden Works, all these spaces are spending enormous creative energy trying to make their customers feel like they're inside a beautiful, intimate, living garden room. Everything they do is in service to that feeling. The way they use plants as architecture rather than merchandise. The way they compose vignettes that look like somebody just stepped away. The way that they layer objects at every height so your eye never hits a flat wall. They're working towards something, and what they're working towards already exists. It's called the Great Garden Room, and you can find it at places like Hidcote in the Cotswolds, in Sissinghurst Castle in Kent, in the walled gardens of the English country house tradition. These retailers are students of those spaces, whether they know it consciously or not. And once I understood that, I started finding a design language that names what I was feeling in those courtyards. And it turns out that these principles, which are actually drawn from set design, from environmental psychology, and from visual merchandising, from landscape architecture and garden design history, these explain exactly why certain spaces feel the way that they do. And once you have those principles, you can't unsee them. You start reading every space differently. So let me share what I've found, because this is the framework that I'm going to be working from as I design my garden at Sugar Hill. The first group of principles is about how space is shaped and experienced. Enclosure, that relationship between the height of the surrounding elements and the width of the space between them, is the foundation of human scale. When that ratio is right, you feel like you're being held in space. When it's wrong, no amount of beautiful planting is going to make a space feel cozy. Connected to enclosure is the sequence of this idea of compression and expansion. The way the greatest spaces move you through tight thresholds into open rooms, creating a rhythm of arrival and release that keeps the experience alive as you move through it. Then there's sightline choreography, the deliberate composition of what you see from every significant position in a space. The best spaces are designed backwards from a view. Someone stood in that spot and asked, "What does this look like from here?" In the scenic hierarchy, the understanding that a great space has an anchor, a supporting architecture, character objects that suggest that it's lived in, and a detail layer that rewards close looking, close inspection. Spaces that feel thin usually have the anchor in the detail, but are missing the middle layers that give a space its sense of life. And finally, the threshold, that arrival experience, the first 10 feet, the moment of transition from the outside world to the inside world. In the spaces I love, this transition is never accidental. The second group is about how a space is felt, not just seen. Sensory layering, this coherent engagement of scent and sound and texture and temperature, in addition to what you see. The spaces that I love smell like damp earth, like old wood and something green. And I've learned that that's not accidental. The principle that every light source should appear to come from somewhere believable within the world of that space. Pools of warm light with shadows in between, rather than having bright, cold overhead lighting. The shadows are as important as the light to creating atmosphere. Water is perhaps the single most important atmospheric element in any garden. Still water creates reflection and stillness, and moving water creates a sound boundary, has a psychological quality, and makes the space feel completely different. I've seen this on my own patio. Another thing to think about is microclimate, the invisible infrastructure that creates comfort in a garden. We've got sun and shade, wind and shelter. And a space can be perfectly composed and still feel uncomfortable to sit in if the microclimate hasn't been considered. If you've ever sat in a hot, sunny garden with no shelter, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The third group is about what a space says. its personality and story. Every great space has a single governing emotional truth. Not necessarily a color palette, not a style, not an emotion. Like when you go into terrain, it kind of feels like what a Pennsylvania farm would become if it was the most beautiful place you've ever been. Everything in that space serves a single emotional truth. And the most sophisticated principle of all is that the best spaces feel like you've arrived into the middle of an ongoing story, like you've entered into another world. There's evidence of life being lived, a muddy trowel, a potting bench, an open book. These spaces don't feel like museums where everything is perfect and nothing is touched, but you see beautiful objects and you feel like it's a place you can linger. Another thing to consider is how materials age. Designing with moss on stone or the bleaching of terracotta, the specific beauty of things that have weathered honesty to them. This isn't neglect, this is intentional design. And this notion that every place has a genius to it. Its history, its topography, its existing character. The gardens that feel most right are always the ones that feel like they emerged from the place rather than being imposed upon it. If you live in a desert region, it doesn't make sense to build an English garden. And the fourth group of design principles is specific to gardens. And it's where garden design goes beyond anything that retail or set design can fully address. Time. Gardens are really four-dimensional. They change daily. They change through the season. They change across years as the plants mature. And every design decision has to work not just for how it looks today, but needs to think about how it's going to look across time. That winter courtyard at Fleur Detroit taught me this. Beauty isn't seasonal if you design for structure and composition. And gardens need to think about how plants relate to each other as a living community, not just as individual specimens arranged for effect. The complexity and coherence of plant communities is what gives a garden its sense of aliveness that no arrangement of objects can replicate. And there's also a tension between order and wilderness. The most beloved gardens hold this tension so deliberately. A perfectly clipped hedge containing an apparently spontaneous flowering meadow. Nature is collaborator, not as something being suppressed. And in gardens, we're also designing for wildlife, for pollinators, for soil health. Not just for ethical reasons, though those are super important, but because gardens designed ecologically feel more alive. The presence of bees and butterflies and birds, this all adds an animated layer that no beautiful amount of planning alone can replicate. The notion of the borrowed landscape, incorporating views beyond the garden boundaries into the composition, something like a distant tree or a church spire, a view of the sky framed between tall hedges. The garden's visual territory expands beyond what you own in terms of land. There's also an understanding that a garden is experienced as a choreographed sequence of spaces, each with its own character, connected by transitions, and the transitions themselves need to be designed. What is hidden and then revealed? What draws you forward as you're walking through the garden? What makes the return journey feel different than when you arrived? This is Sugar Hill. Right now, it's just a house in progress. The garden is a blank slate. There's no formal design yet, no hedges clipped into rooms, no overhead plane of tree canopy creating that sense of held human scale. At least not yet. But I have something I didn't have before. I now have a framework, a design language, a set of principles drawn from the spaces that have moved me the most, those retail courtyards that stop me in my tracks on a winter afternoon. And I have something else. I have time. The house isn't finished. The garden hasn't been designed. And right now, I'm in what I think of as the gathering phase, collecting vignettes and ideas, building a vocabulary of things that inspire me, developing the design language that will eventually become Sugar Hill's garden. I don't know exactly what this garden will look like yet. I genuinely don't. And I find that exciting because now I understand what it needs to feel like. I know the principles, the specific expression of that truth, the plants, the structures, the rooms, the sequence of moving through that space. That's what we're going to figure out. Because that's what this channel is going to be. Not a finished garden tour, not a how-to series, but a genuine design journey. From blank canvas to something extraordinary. Guided by a design philosophy I've spent years developing without fully knowing I was doing it. The principles are the map. Sugar Hill is the territory. And we're at the very beginning. And I hope you'll stay for what's to come. That's it for this video, and we'll see you in the next one.